May. The time of year in the Northern Hemisphere when plants across the board just get so randy that anyone with allergies begins the process of transformation into a slime from Pick Your Slime reference here. Hi, I'm Blubbly's mom, and this is the 5th episode of this series, because May is the 5th month, you see. The 5th video of me documenting my progress of playing and ranking 100 games from the past 30 years. This is that list. I've been playing them in release order. But that's month-old news. What did I play in May? I played 2008's Persona 4 Golden, 2010's Vanquish and Shiren the Wanderer and the Tower of Fortune and Dice of Fate, 2011's Lord of Arcana, and Pandora's Tower. I said I'd play Ni no Kuni last episode, and well, time constraints exist. Even a barely employed woman has other things that take up her time. Also, I had to skip around years a bit, so it was house cleaning by playing Persona. But without further ado, let's get to talking about and ranking these games. 2008. Persona 4 Golden is a turn-based RPG developed by Atlus and published by Sega for PS2, Vita, Windows, Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. I picked it because of a mix of reasons. The only other Persona game I've played is 5, so I was curious about another entry in the series, and it was a specific request by my partner. Persona 4 opens with your character moving to Inaba, a rural Japanese town, because your parents are away on business, and so you're staying with your uncle and his daughter. During the first few days, however, a murder takes place. You and your plucky group of teen friends take it upon yourselves to solve that murder. The gameplay, I'd say, is a mostly 50-50 split of turn-based combat and turn-based day-to-day living. You will be spending the next year or so of your life in Inaba, and what you do on any given day is entirely up to you. Your day-to-day time is spent mostly hanging out with friends, working part-time jobs, or training up your stats to hang out with your friends and do your jobs better. The reason you want to hang out with your friends, besides the obvious, is increasing the social link with that character. Leveling up a social link with non-party members nets you an XP boost when fusing specific personas, and sometimes side benefits. Your party members, however, gain additional combat abilities. The strategy around this arises from friends and activities not always being accessible. The other bit is combat. I didn't and won't specify dungeon delving because there isn't really a dungeon design in the first place. It's a randomized set of halls with stairs on each end. Bear with me, as I don't have footage, but it's standardly turn-based, the strategy revolving around the weaknesses of your enemies and allies. Physical, fire, ice, wind, lightning, dark, and light. If someone is hit with a thing they're weak to, they get knocked down. You get an additional turn. Knock all enemies down, and you get to go all out, dealing a nice chunk of damage to all enemies for free. You also get a variety of status effects for buffs and debuffs, of course. As a preliminary, I did not complete Persona 4 Golden. I did complete Persona 4, though. If you are desirous of a complete Persona 4 Golden experience, take my friendly advice and max out Marie's social link as a priority. Anyway. The primary draw for me to a Persona game is not its combat. It is in the main and side stories and characters. A facet of Persona 4 that at times felt hollow. The main story of who is the murderer is an interesting one. The how gets answered fairly quickly. The precise why keeps us guessing, however. The main theme that runs through the game could have been stronger, in my opinion. Truth is the name of the game in Persona 4, but it is a squirrely notion, as they tell you multiple times. Keeping this on the end of spoiled, I'll say that it just never felt as hard-hitting as it could have. Anyway, perverts. Persona 4 has two notable ones. I speak, of course, of Yosuke and Teddy. I'll talk about why I hate when lecherous fiends are in my game first. It's tiring. Setting aside the treatment of women and setting aside whether the quote-unquote joke is funny, it's just repetitive. It feels like once a week of in-game time, Yosuke or Teddy are just saying the same joke. It's not different or nuanced. It's just the same. The other more prevalent issue is how others feel about their behavior. If each time Yosuke opened his dirty mouth, instead of his normal one, you could kick him in the shins, that would be great. But each time they are reprimanded, and each time they never learn. On Teddy's part, although it is not explored in the English translation, it could be seen that he is a product of his environment, Yosuke and whatever TV he watches, as the cause for his whole deal. However, no amount of time spent in the real world dampens his spirit, nor does Yosuke grow in any meaningful way. They could have addressed it as part of his social link or truth, but no. To be positive for a moment, I can uplift the day management. Given how high up the likes of Persona, Cute Knight, and Reciteer are, I like day management games. Each day gives you a set amount of things to choose from, and you choose them, always moving forward and unable to dally permanently. There is a time limit. Persona in particular tickles that itch delightfully. When I think of other daily games, something like Stardew Valley, the day is a timer. Here, it's choices. You can mull over your options as long as you need. That and the year time limit makes decisions feel weightier. When will the next opportunity arise for me to hang out with a friend? I don't know. Another problem I have with Persona games is its lackluster main character. Although there are bits and pieces of who this person we're playing as is, the lack of voice and decisions just make him feel like a shell. I understand that as a player we're supposed to put on that shell, and game-wise, there's a reason for him to be able to swap personas. He's just putting on masks of who he is. But he feels more like a divine agent of change than a written-out human character. I know part of it is to slot myself in the role of Mr. Protagonist, but I'm not a man, teen, or Japanese. Is this game not for me? Well, if I limited myself to just playing games where the characters were like me, that'd be pretty boring. Can you imagine someone getting mad that the main character of their video games wasn't always a white man? How boring would that be? All this to say, I'd rather have the character be written to be a character, or have enough agency that I have options to select a role for my character. Persona also has an issue of character development. Not in how I think these characters could have been better, but how they grow. Most social links begin with a person facing some trouble or hard question in their life. Through the power of hanging out enough with you, they grow as a person. Specifically you. While I understand the need to have the player there with whoever to tell their story, it makes them feel much flatter that way. Even if the character development happens between hangout sessions, it still just feels tied to your character in an inextricable way. Anyway, Persona 4 Golden faces the truth that it is the 6th best game of all time. I was slightly underwhelmed by Persona 4, partly because of my experiences with 5, but the larger reason for my disappointment was how toothless it felt. Combat never feels truly clever, even as tight as that combat is. The day-to-day is solid. From the way I spoke, you might have thought I would rate it lower. But I did cruise through this game. I laughed, I struggled, I was surprised. Like with any good thing, the faults stand out more the more you want it to be good. 2010.
Vanquish.
Vanquish is a third-person shooter developed by Platinum Games and published by Sega for PS3, 360, Windows, PS4, and Xbox One. I picked it because it's an over-the-top, silly game I've owned for a while, and damn it, I want to beat it. The game's opening premise is that a coup d'etat took place in Russia, and the new people in charge also took control of a microwave beam emitter / space station colony and microwaved San Francisco. They have demands from the US, which are ignored in favor of a counter-assault. You play as... I'll be honest, I can't remember his name. I would look it up, but it really doesn't matter. You play as a man in a supersuit who goes along with the Marines to save the day. The gameplay is mostly a third-person cover shooter. With the addition of a sliding boost and some slow-mo, the pace of combat is upbeat. The facet of gameplay I actually found most interesting was weapon upgrading. You can hold 3 weapons at a time, but picking up a weapon when it is already full on ammo levels it up, earns a promotion. At certain ranks, the weapon gets a capacity, magazine, or damage upgrade. Die, however, and it is demoted. It is an addition that bumps up the already arcadey feel. Arcade game is definitely what the game most resembles as well, with each level finishing with a point tally. I have little to say about Vanquish other than that it is a competent spectacle game. A spectacle game, a term I tried Googling and found no results other than spectacle fighter. Mine is the broader term. I win. Although the last result on the page is Resident Evil games, which definitely fit the bill. Anyways, I define it as thus. A spectacle game is a game in which the absurdity of its over-the-topness is a primary feature. Vanquish slides its way into 16th. As little as I said about Vanquish, it's very competent, pretty fun. Even on normal difficulty, it wasn't always a cakewalk. It stood head and shoulders above its ilk in spectacle and ease / fun of play. Shiren the Wanderer, the Tower of Fortune and Dice of Fate, is a roguelike developed and published by Chunsoft for DS, Vita, Switch, PC, and mobile. I picked it because I had it already, because when I was young I liked the mystery dungeon Pokemon games, and I was curious about the genre. So at some point I picked this up. You play as Shiren, the Wanderer, along with your companion, Kappa, a storytelling ferret. You wander. This is the 5th game in the series, despite not having a number attached, nor does it need one. The story is entirely contained. You come across a small village where a girl is dying from a terminal illness. Her childhood friend decides to go to the apparently nearby Tower of Fate, roll the dice of fortune to change her fate. Presumably for better fortune. Interested in the legend, Shira and Kappa lend a helping hand and paw. The gameplay is Mystery Dungeon. A true Mystery Dungeon game is what I'd like to say, but I'm going to try to work through what that actually means if you're unfamiliar. It's a turn-based game where you must work through floors of towers or other structures, all while fighting enemies that appear. You have many options at your disposal aside from swinging a weapon, and you'll have to use your brain to get out of some of the scrapes. I didn't actually realize Mystery Dungeon games are roguelike until I was playing this one. Not in the modern day parlance of any game which you upgrade your character till you die or win, but literally the game Rogue. I realized Dark Chronicle was a Mystery Dungeon-esque game, but I didn't realize the further influence of Rogue, which is on me as a fake gamer, truly. I think it clicked here, as opposed to any other time I've played similar games, because it shares the most DNA. That DNA is complicated, though. Sort of. Both Rogue and Shiren are games that have a high barrier to entry that reveal themselves as pretty approachable games if you get over that first hump. Shiren has 45-ish tutorial dungeons to teach you individual mechanics, as minute as moving, most of which aren't necessary. I dare say that once you play a true mystery dungeon game, the Pokemons couldn't hold any water outside of their cute factor. It's got a multitude of systems and minigames that it's a lot to take in on the first go-around, but it all settles into a nice rhythm of play. Shiren the Wanderer, the Tower of Fortune, and Dice of Fate ascends the list to the 6th best game of all time, and first for the longest title. To be honest, I only beat the main tower. There is at least 3 or 4 times as much game as the base game for those that like the gameplay loop. I did, but I also understand what it's got inside. It's the 5th go-around for Shiren, which means everything present is honed to a shiny edge. 2011. Lord of Arcana is an action RPG developed by Access Games and published by Square Enix for PSP. I picked it because it seemed silly. It's a Squeenix game for PSP that I've never heard of. If I wrote a full paragraph about the opening of the game, it would be about the same amount of text written for the opening narration. It's about trying to become a new monarch by killing monsters, hunting them even. The gameplay loop is Monster Hunter. I didn't know that before playing, but the only difference is that it has leveling up and magic. If you're unfamiliar with the Monster Hunter, is it a genre? The loop is pretty simple. Take on a job to do one of 3 things usually. Kill an amount of simple mobs, collect a resource, or hunt a boss. The combat in Lord of Arcana, however, takes place instanced rather than in the world. So you're always working with just a circular battlefield. You run around, dodge things, hit things. It's basically Monster Hunter. I'll be honest, I probably played for a total of 4 hours. I didn't beat it. But I know exactly what this game is going for in that time, partially because it's just Monster Hunter, and partially because they give you a taste of what a high-level character would play like. I beat 2 lords, failed against a 3rd. I could have muscled through and pushed on through grinding this game out, but much like Monster Hunter, it's just worth playing with people rather than playing solo. Lord of Arcana is the Lord of Nothing at 40th. I understand what this game is trying to do, enjoyed it at times, but this game doesn't do it in a manner that I can play solo 15 years after its release. Feasibly, anyway. It's worth remembering that this is a PSP game. If I were riding the bus home or on long drives, this would slap. I suppose it hurts that it isn't evaluated as it would have been played, but I have no such qualms in doing so. I'm not in 2011. Pandora's Tower is an action RPG developed by Ganbarian and published by Xseed for Nintendo Wii. I picked it because it was a Wii game with a cool cover. The story is that in this world, occasionally, people are cursed. The curse eventually turns them into beasts. Elena, who I'll call our protagonist even though we don't play as her, is cursed. You control Aaron, a defected soldier from another country. When the curse overtakes Elena at a festival, you are approached by Mavda, a woman who claims she knows how to lift the curse. She takes you to the 13 towers, which hang above the scar, and tells you to retrieve beast flesh for Elena to eat to stave off her curse. The gameplay is similar to Devil May Cry, I think is the closest comparison, though this game's combat is much simpler. You run around towers looking to open the doors to bosses. The unique feature of Pandora's Tower, however, is the Oraclos chain. Because it's a Wii game, of course, it has pointing and motion controls. There's a lot you can do with this chain too. Chain enemies together, swing them around, lock them up, grapple hook, deal damage, a whole host of options. Okay, that's most of it. But for a Wii game, motion controller gimmick, it felt surprisingly good. For most Wii games, I feel being made to use the Wii mode is kind of a pain point. But it never really felt like that here. Maybe once or twice. The boss design is stellar. Of the bosses, there were a couple of weaker spots, but in sum total, great. Instead of being designed around the simple combat, they're designed around the chain and its use, all being closer to a puzzle. With any boss in this kind of genre of game, you're generally looking for openings to attack, but here the attack is just your opportunity to use the chain instead of mashing the attack button. I also enjoyed the puzzle design of the areas a lot. I never got stuck for too long, and anything I finally figured out felt very satisfying. It feels so good for what could have had moments of, like, the character saying, I bet I could use this to do that. Instead, it just leaves it to the player. Plus, all those moments weren't huge leaps in logic. The story is a weak point, kind of. The two things Pandora's Tower focuses on the most are its world building and Elena. Aaron is kind of empty as a character, but I strangely didn't mind. His entire character cares about Elena. But the entire game is caring for Elena, so you don't need him waffling or being unsure. This is also one of a few rare games where I ate up all the lore tidbits it gave me. Even with a lot of little scrolls to collect and decipher, they're usually only a paragraph or so, and only pertain to the tower or the country, so I was always scrabbling for more. There's also an interesting factor that is almost take her leave, but it feels like a good addition to talk about, which is the fact that Elena has a timer before the curse converts her into a monster. Returning and giving her flesh to eat restores that timer. Through my entire playtime, I only bumped up against this as an obstacle, like once or twice, but it's also generous enough with shortcuts in the towers themselves that it never feels like a drag to just return on her and feed her some meat. A weak point I would point out is that the dungeons look pretty samey. The music is entirely from older public domain classical stuff, but to me, it makes the whole thing feel more grounded. For the dungeon design anyway. Yeah, fantasy, and it takes place in a castle suspended over a hole in the ground, but the things you're working around in the castle are all decay. There are stairs and elevators to most areas, but their damage prevents their use. Most areas feel designed for people to have gone in previously, mostly. Aside from the small selection of music, I never actually noticed it was from old composers, aside from one because of pretty good compositions. Pandora's Tower grapple chains its way to the 4th best game of all time. When I ranked it, I thought to myself, surely it's not this good, right? But then I sat on it for a day, and then I sat on it for a couple days, and I'm like, I think this game is just that good. It sits right above like Grim Fandango, which fantastic game, but I just really enjoyed Pandora's Tower. It's just good, and it's criminal that it's not in any of the like Wii best games lists. Now I'm improving, but if you have like a Wiimote and the ability to play this, I would recommend checking it out. That's all I'm saying. It's good. That's May, folks. As I mentioned at the top of my video, the intention was to play Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch, for one of 2011's picks, but Nino ran out of time for May. Also, I'm not playing it anymore. I don't want to dig out my PS3 or try to find wherever the hell the disc is for Ni no Kuni, and I don't want to pay $50 for a remaster of a game that's like $10 on original hardware, unfact-checked. So I swapped it with Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. Currently playing through that at the end of May, and I will finish that probably early June. I don't have any long RPGs for the next 6 games, I'm going to say, which are 2012's Botanicula, Legend of Grimrock, which the old heads may recognize that I used as a touch point for one of my other games. Anyway, and a game which was chosen on a whim to replace a game I can't remember what it replaced, and I don't know how it's gonna be. It is Root Double Before Crime After Days Extend Edition, which I looked up after while I was writing, and it's 30 hours for a time to beat estimate. I don't know if that's just because it's just a visual novel with a lot of words or what. Anyways, after that, we've got 2013's Gingiva, Dominic Pamplemousse in It's All Over Once the Fat Lady Sings, and Heroine's Quest. So yeah, that's gonna be my June games. I maybe I'll get further than that. Who knows? But we'll have to see then. Until then, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.